Welcome to Generalizing Love, where we detrivialize love from a particular emotion out of the sea of emotions, and we delocalize love from something that comes and goes to something which is ever present and is coloring every single emotional state. Every single object, situation, and institution is a hue of love. And how? Well, we have to generalize love. And the way to do that is to not interpret love as some kind of mapping, but to rather view love as a spectrum between understanding or contemplation and joy or merriness. And this spectrum subdivides into subspectra called the 7 heart virtues. Understanding or contemplation is the boundary and the gateway for adults, and joy or merriment is the core and therefore the gateway for children to enter an ever-present loving state. For adolescents, both the core and the boundary, joy and understanding, fun and contemplation, humorousness and studiousness or seriousness can be accessed at once, and therefore the lifelong process of personality crystallization can commence. And this lifelong process is what many people call emotional balancing. All emotions are thereby interpreted in terms of love. Positive emotions are celebrations of love, whereas negative emotions are temporary distortions or deviations from love, which are catalytic. Catalytic because they are allowing love to wisen or learn lessons that allow love to generalize, regularize, specialize, and crystallize, as opposed to becoming blocked or overactivated. Blocked in the sense of a lack of love, and overactivated in the sense of naive or martyring love. The limit of love is martyrdom or surrender. The limit of wisdom is solitude or superiority. Where love and wisdom are one, joy and understanding are fused, and so are the core and boundary, the twin gateways of the yin and yang. Push and pull, life and death, good and evil. So I want to, in this episode, discuss a little bit about joy or fun and its spectrum or subspectrum. But I also want to introduce the subspectra of the vortical virtues of love. Now, we say vortical because each virtue or attribute of love is a vortex that allows for, it's a gateway through which the other attributes can be accessed. Now, I do not want to become too technical because this is an overactivation on my part. I was born with, in fact, the only sense in which my life is anomalous is that I was basically born with the core and boundary, with joy and understanding as co-activated. However, the other attributes of love, the other vortical virtues, were effectively deactivated, which led to a radical overactivation of the core and boundary. And I will discuss the blockages and imbalances that surface due to this overactivation. Now I'm going to share my screen as I prepared a little text. And I will read with brief addenda. As you can see, we have a somewhat visual representation of the vortical virtues, the 7 vortical virtues, contemplation being the outer boundary, and joy/fun being the core or origin. Now remember, due to self-duality, or as some people call it, non-duality, which emphasizes a negation but not a singularity, the core or origin and boundary are one. They're simultaneous. They're code-defining. Can't have one without the other. You can't have love without wisdom. You can't have an origin without a boundary. Okay. Now, the central spectrum of metaphysical love, which is maximally generalized love into universal love, is a biconditional connection between understanding or contemplation, these are synonymous, and joy/fun. Now, joy and fun are a little bit trickier to understand because joy can be both passionate or serious/studious, or giddy and merry or humorous. And these are, in a sense, opposite, right? Someone who's engrossed or entranced in their work is passionate and assiduous, whereas a child who is, in a fit of laughter is at the pinnacle of pure joy. So we want to subdivide joy as well. In fact, even though understanding and joy are the boundary and origin of metaphysical love, they subdivide into subspectra, which we will now pry into. So understanding, whose subspectrum is the biconditionality between inquisitiveness or curiosity and assuredness or certainty, is the boundary, as we discussed, and joy, whose subspectrum is assiduousness, or basically being passionate, hard at work, and merriness, being carefree yet excited, is the core of love. I'm going to read that without the addendum. Understanding is the boundary, and joy is the core of love. It's universal love. For children, joy and fun are the gateway. For adults, understanding and contemplation are the gateway. Adolescents are readily able to access both gateways at once, thereby initiating the subtle, lifelong process called personality crystallization, whereby the mortal personality becomes more and more of an unique, an irreducible embodiment of the magical personality. Notice that we're saying the magical personality. We are all unique embodiments of the magical personality. Where the boundary smothers the core, or rather where wisdom smothers love, or where the core outshines the boundary, meaning that love totally overshadows wisdom, the human personality is experiencing an overactivation. Where neither understanding nor joy are initiated, due, for example, to excessive luxury, whereby someone is not contemplative and is also bored of their life in a way, or overly stimulated, or due to trauma, which means that joy is usually not activated and understanding is nihilistic, the human personality is stuck in the sinkhole of blockage. The 7 vortical virtues, or subspectra, of metaphysical love are on display. So at the center, the origin, we have joy and fun, biconditionally feeding back between assiduousness and merriness, passion and humor, work and play. A lot of people think that joy, there's be no joy in work, but of course, maybe you've heard about the labor of love, where it's artwork. Artwork is joy, whereas play is heart work. Now, above, we have contemplation, which is synonymous with understanding. And we have inquisitiveness being the negative aspect of the spectrum, and assuredness being the positive aspect. Inquisitiveness means that there's some confusion or issue that requires some inquiry. And assuredness means that you have certainty. Now, when I was a child, I had both inquiry and certainty. I was deeply curious about why anything exists, but I also was certain that existence exists. And I knew that this certainty was the boundary of the inquisitiveness. No matter how much curiosity or confusion I engendered, I nevertheless always felt certain that existence exists. Something exists. And this something is unity. This led to an ultimate state of peace amid any form of seeking or curiosity. Now, on the left, we have compassion, which was and to some extent still is, the attribute or virtue of love with which I most struggle. Okay, now openness is the negative aspect and gentleness is the positive aspect. Openness can be restated as patience. I become easily annoyed, which is a form of superiority. Whereas gentleness, I could be very harsh and acerbic in my demeanor, word, and action. More on that later. Humility, another difficulty that I've had. Being born with both joy and understanding, I felt that I had all figured it out when I was a kid. That didn't mean that I felt superior in the sense of arrogance, but rather I felt more activated. And I felt that I was able to read people better than they were able to read themselves. And this actually was to some extent true. So I was overactivated in the sense that the negative aspect of humility, being honesty, was obvious to me. I was able to honestly read people when they were lying, or when they were trying to trick, or when they were confused, why they were confused. Whereas the positive aspect means that you imbue honesty with gentleness and thereby effectuate subtlety, right? Sometimes you hear the term brutal honesty. Well, brutal honesty is seldom required. Usually what is required is subtlety, where you're honest yet subtle in your expression so that you can gently sway someone to perceive the truth for themselves rather than to brutally impose or foist the truth onto them. Which is what brutal honesty does. Sometimes it's required. Appreciation. This was one of my relative strengths. Feeling radical gratitude for every step that you take and your skeletal system does not disintegrate. Feeling gratitude for the water running from the sink, for the food in your mouth, for the bed that you get to sleep in, for the roof over your head, for the clothes, for your friends, for the breath, the fact that you can urinate without pain, the fact that there are no obvious internal problems or malfunctions in your body. Every moment that you are not ill or injured is a moment of thanksgiving or gratitude. That's the negative aspect. Positive aspect is admiration, feeling awe, wonder for anything, person's face, person's achievements, the enormity of a mountain, the distance of stars. Many things and admiration can lead to inspiration. So it's very important to think of admiration as the proper mode of pride or achievement, a sense of achievement. Right? Mercy. This is subdivided into judiciousness and forgiveness. Judiciousness means either restraint or self-defense. You have to discern whether it is necessary to defend yourself or whether it is necessary to cease attack. Whereas forgiveness is something that most humans are acquainted with. You have to let go of the sorrow that you have caused yourself or others. Letting go means that you accept its existence and its necessity. In fact, as a mandate of parsimony, existence is necessity. When something occurs, when something exists, when something arises, it necessarily occurred. This means that the global operator descriptor, or God, effectuated it, projected it into some locality so that some mortal form or some set of mortal forms register it. And they can thereby become inquisitive about it. They can contemplate why this occurred and forgive themselves for it having occurred. forgiving reality for having occurred. A lot of people are angry with reality. Why did this terrible thing happen to me? Why did this traumatic event happen to me? What did I do? I'm innocent. Well, the reality is, if something happens, it means that the global aspect of yourself, the God, projected it to your localized self, which is what you usually consider to be me. And then valor, whose negative aspect is bravery and whose positive aspect is perseverance. Bravery can include toughness. Being brave doesn't just mean that you're fearless, but it means that in spite of fear, you face the challenge or the uncertainty and you surmount it by virtue of facing it. So bravery doesn't mean you're fearless. It means that in spite of fear and pain, you nevertheless stand up and face that fear and pain. Of course, you can also imbue it with inquisitiveness, right? All these negative aspects, in other words, negative emotions, and we'll talk about that in a second, can be situated as temporary catalytic distortions of these attributes or virtues of love, and can be repotentialized through the negative, you can think of the negative aspects of each of these virtues as the gateways through which you can repotentialize negative emotions and learn from the catalysts. Nothing negative that happens is non-catalytic. Everything that happens which is negative is catalytic. So this is something that took me a long time to truly ingest and digest and accept, integrate into my very essence. So bravery, that's the negative aspect of fear. And anything that is causing you fear or pain, you have to be brave. You have to be courageous and tough. Whereas once you start to realize that fear and pain are not just going to go away, you have to persevere and determine, resolve to surmount that fear or pain. So once again, joy and contemplation are understanding of the core and the boundary, twin gateways to enter metaphysical love in a generalized sense, a universalized sense, whereas the rest of these virtues are sub-gateways, subspectra: compassion, humility, appreciation, valor, and mercy, all of which have biconditionally linked negative and positive aspects. Positive aspects are celebratory and negative aspects are educatory, educational. Education and celebration, negativity and positivity are one under systemic self-duality, which is the mathematical aspect of love. Now, I will briefly read this paragraph. Each positive emotional attribute, such as excitement, pleasure, loyalty, kindness, calmness, etc., may be located within one or more of these subspectra. And each negative emotional attribute, greed, arrogance, resentment, envy, self-doubt, hatred, etc., can be discerned as a temporary yet indefinite catalytic distortion of one or more of these spectra. It's temporary, but it can last as long as it is required to induce or stimulate learning, education. Catalysts, whether internal or environmental, that is to say, whether mental or perceptual, are in no way random adverse events. There's no such thing as randomness in a self-structured reality, but rather opportune challenges self-programmed on a higher stratum of programming, regressing to the global stratum, to stimulate a recalibration of the human personality. That is to say, either to rupture the cyclicity of a hurtful habit, to seal an emotional gap, or to heal an emotional scar. Once a human either rationally understands or emotionally intuits that the primary mission of incarnating into third density is to situate each and every moment or event, object, and institution into the intelligence of universal love, which is, by the way, infinite, where infinity and universality are synonymous, one has initiated the lifelong process of generalizing, regularizing, specializing, and crystallizing one's mortal personality into an irreducibly unique embodiment of the magical personality. Now, generalizing is the first step. Once you generalize love, then you have to regularize this generality so that every event, even if you don't yet understand how it fits into love, is nevertheless situated within love. Whether it's a negative or positive aspect of love, whether it's a wise or free aspect of love, then you then begin to specialize different events within these vortical virtues, okay, these ensembles, right, these subspectra. This takes study, this takes perceptual study. You have to study your own perceptions, right? Are you judging? Are you becoming resentful? Are you getting annoyed? Or are you being grateful, honest, subtle, brave? Which situations call for which ensembles or subspectra of these virtues? Once you start to naturally, which is to say instinctually, react to situations through these virtues, and you begin discerning and the lessons and celebrations in tandem, the negative and positive aspects in tandem, you begin crystallizing your mortal personality shell into the unique jewel that you are, which is a unique embodiment of the magical personality of the one infinite creator, or the God. And you perceive service to others as service to self. Begin engaging in true altruism. Now, because of my comprehensively loving family, both, near and extended, because of the because of the fact that I did not lack any basic biological needs or even psychological needs as a child, and because of the beauty to which I was exposed, I was joyous as a child. I could explain more, but I will withhold that until the next segment. Suffice it to say for now, through love, I was able to feel merry for any moment which was not negative. The absence of negativity to me was not neutral or boring or apathetic, but was pure peace and bliss. I challenge you to face every single neutral or non-negative event as a moment of peace and bliss. Staring into a bare room before you engage in an activity is a moment of peace. This is what people do when they pray or meditate. So, due to the angelic encounter, when I was 5, I felt deeply inquisitive and certain. Thereby, I was activating the subspectrum of understanding or contemplation. But at the same time, my visceral reality was one of pure joy. Pure joy. My childhood is something that is a ballast point. It is something that I think of every single day as a source of strength and peace and even nostalgia, but not in a negative sense, not in a longing or a gloomy sense, but rather if you understand that every single event is a kernel that is recorded in reality's memory, then you realize that everything is accessible not only through your own local memory, but through dreams and the post-incarnation retraction review. You will get to relive any event for however long you want when you exit this mortal coil. You no longer have this localized, mortalized body. The certainty that I can relive any positive or celebratory event means that nostalgia takes on a whole new meaning. Most people think of nostalgia as a wistfulness or some gloominess about the fact that you cannot relive an event. But you can, number one, relive an event through dreams. This has happened time and time again. And at the same time, you can know for a fact, or a mathematical fact, that you can relive any event after this incarnation is complete, which is a joyous, even a humorous realization. Now you might wonder, what about negative events? Do I have to relive those? No, not unless you don't process them as catalytic within the lifetime. But we will discuss more in part 4. Thank you so much for listening.